everyone, welcome back to Virtual Teen Summer Reading. This is Amber and I will be leading you through our first try at Take It and Make It Mondays. For this week, we are going to be focusing on the theme of fantasy. Fantasy may be realms of magic and mythical creatures, but it can also be slightly more temporal, like creating your own fantasy island escape on the new ultra-popular Animal Crossing New Horizons. For this week, we will be creating some felt keychains inspired by the iconic graphics of the Animal Crossing universe. Our first order of business is to gather our supplies. If you haven't already, make sure that you have your kit and take a glance at the kit sheet with listed materials. These materials include cardstock stencils for 12 different keychain designs, 3 pieces of felt in random colors, white and black accent pieces of felt, a needle, a fabric pin, and a bit of thread. You'll also need to grab your own scissors and a pencil. This project has a total of 6 steps. Starting with the simplest, we're going to cut out the cardstock stencils. Make sure that you save the colored design template for reference when adding your accent pieces later. I've decided to demonstrate the leaf design, which represents furniture and object items in Animal Crossing. The leaf contains a base and 2 accent pieces. The accent pieces are sometimes a little tricky, for example, with the fossil icon's white and purple center swirl or the money bag's ribbon. If something is too small to cut, I suggest that you avoid cutting it out and use a marker to draw on the piece. It is better to have the accent in one piece than to worry about having a precisely cut stencil, so always cut a little bit bigger than the lines show. At the end, I have 4 pieces of cardstock, but some other designs like the peach have more parts. Using the stencils we just cut out, we are now going to use them to cut out our felt. Everyone has 3 random colors, so you can pick a color that matches your chosen design, or pick your favorite color to start with. For my design, even though the leaf is green, I only have brown and purple. I knew I wanted to use the purple for a fossil and maybe a piece of fruit later, so I decided to make a fall leaf with a dark brown felt base. To cut out the base, carefully find your fabric pin in the plastic container in your kit. It should have a green bauble on one side. Place your stencil on one of the felt corners. Secure the cardstock to the felt with a pin, careful not to stab yourself. And carefully cut out the base. You are going to need 2 of these bases, one front and one back base. Once you finish cutting out the felt, make sure that you save any scraps. These can be used later on for keychain tabs, accent pieces, or just sewing practice. For the accent pieces, you should use a different felt color than the bases. Here I am using a light brown for the veins of my leaf. Because the accent piece stencil may tear from the fabric pin, I suggest that you trace the shape of the stencil onto the fabric with a pencil. If you are worried about the pencil showing on the fabric, you can flip the stencil over and use the reverse design. Then, once you have a felt cutout, you can use the side without the pencil on it, like I do here. And that is owning a cat. Guard your crafts from playful pets, or you could end up searching your entire house for a missing stencil piece. For every accent piece that you cut out, make sure to stack the piece onto the base to check for fit. If you need to know where a piece goes, check the colored design diagram that you saved. For example, I needed to check where exactly to place the white accent piece, or in the graphic, the hole at the bottom of the leaf. After cutting out the felt pieces, you should have 2 bases, your accent pieces, and a 1-inch tab of scrap fabric. To make the keychain sturdy, we are going to prepare a double-threaded needle. Thread the needle and pull the string so that it is exactly doubled and even at the 2 ends. Tie a knot at the end of the thread to secure the pieces together and to prevent the thread from slipping through the felt while sewing. If you don't feel comfortable with sewing, feel free to use fabric glue or a hot glue gun. The first stitch we are going to use is the running stitch. This is one of the easiest stitches and simply requires a consistent up and down piercing of the fabric. Using this stitch, we will sew on the accent pieces. If you have thread that matches the accent felt's color, I suggest that you use that color. You can do any accent piece first. I did the white piece first since it was the closest to the edge before attaching the veins. When you finish with an accent piece, tie a knot at the back to prevent the thread from slipping out. You can tie many multiple knots since the ugly back will be hidden in the middle. Maybe you can even hide a secret message or just save that for next week's craft. Using the running stitch, we will combine the back base with the 1-inch rectangular strip of scrap fabric to make a tab. For this demonstration, I am using a light colored string so you can see the end results, but I suggest that you use a string that is similar to your base felt color if you have it. This tab will take a beating since it will be the connection between the bead chain and the felt design. So take your time and use a stationary running stitch by sewing the same area repeatedly to make it sturdy. Once you've finished about 8 to 10 passes, knot the string on the front and cut off any excess bits of thread. Again, this side of the fabric won't be seen since it will be in the middle of our felt base sandwich. For our final step, we are going to sew the front base with accent pieces to the back base with the tab piece using a blanket stitch. A blanket stitch is only sewn in one direction but contains a knot. I suggest that you practice this stitch on the edge of some scrap fabric if you've never used it before. So we will pierce the felt from the back, then stick our needle through the loop before tightening and piercing the fabric from the back again. To demonstrate this stitch, I will be using a fossil keychain that I was working on. I think it's easier to see the contrast of the white thread with the dark purple fabric compared to my leaf keychain's black thread. The first stitch will be made through only the front base piece so that the thread's knot is hidden in the middle of our keychain. Pull the thread all the way through and then pierce the fabric again at a similar depth before making a knot. I have never used this stitch before, so I stumbled a bit in areas, but you can definitely get the hang of it with some practice. I learned quickly that using a finger to stop the loop from closing before threading your needle in helps to speed up the sewing process and prevents the thread from twisting. Once you have stitched around the outside of the keychain, tie a final knot into the tab thread to secure the string in place. Cut off any extra thread tails or bits. Once you finish all your sewing, thread a bead chain through the tab and you are done! Thank you for watching the very first episode of Take and Make It Mondays. If you enjoyed this craft, check back next week for our secret mystery card kit.